Okay, guys. Well, welcome to the Chart of Accounts and Account Code training. So let's go ahead and get started. Julie, are we recording? Yes, we're recording.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So today's agenda, we're going to go over default settings, commodity codes, chart of accounts, account code overrides, and then we'll have a Q&A at the end. So like Marina said, if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat. We'll do our best to answer your questions as you put them in the chat. And then if you have any questions at the end, we'll go ahead and have a Q&A session. And then as you guys are joining, please unmute yourselves. And then Julie, if you can go ahead and mute, please. If you see anybody, that would be great. Thank you. Okay, so default settings. So if you guys have been into any of our open labs, we have gone over account code favorites. So that is a function within P2P. You can set your code favorites. We don't recommend that you set anything in your defaults. This is your default tab here. So you can set your codes, but we don't recommend that. It will mess up in the P2P application. You can set code favorites, but you can only use that if all of your commodity codes are the same. So for instance, if everything in your cart is 66003 supplies and services, then you can apply your account code favorites. But if you have different commodity codes and you apply your code favorites, it will basically cause an error and you'll have to go back in and correct your account codes. So that is something that we have put in a ticket for with the P2P core team at the Chancellor's office, but we don't recommend at this time that you use any default settings or code favorites.
Hey, Bianca, can you
Yes.
increase the size of the
Oh, sure.
text? It's a little hard to read. There you go.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the default settings. Okay, so commodity codes. So in your cart, commodity codes will populate. So commodity codes will populate the account codes once you proceed to cart in your requisition. So it's really important, especially on Amazon and Staples punchouts, that you review your commodity codes and make any changes before you proceed to checkout, because your commodity codes is what dictates your account codes. So I'll kind of go ahead and show you how this looks in the P2P application. Okay. So this is a screenshot of the commodity codes in P2P. So right here, I have an Amazon cart. So I have a Logitech USB headset, and this is showing you that the commodity code is telephone usage, so 150016. I have a Test My Drink test kit. So this is for like a GHB detection kit. So this is showing up 170003 general supplies. And then this is for a doorstop, and this is showing up facility supplies. So as you can see, these commodity codes, this is before you proceed to checkout. So you have the ability to change these commodity codes before you proceed to checkout. Okay, so if you want to change your commodity code, so I'm giving you the example of the Logitech headset. So this is the commodity code telephone usage. So I want to change this commodity code because I don't want this commodity code. So you click the magnifying glass here. And then when you click the magnifying glass, these folders will show up, and this will give you options for different commodity codes. So I want to change this commodity code to IT accessories and supplies. So I selected this commodity code 115001 IT accessories and supplies. So this commodity code is selected, and then I selected Save Changes. Okay, so once I did that, the Logitech USB headset is now 115001 IT accessories and supplies. Okay, So like I said before, the commodity codes is what dictates your account code once you proceed to checkout. So this is showing you the checkout screen. So this is showing you that once I changed my commodity code to 15001 to IT accessories and supplies, it now made my account code 616005 miscellaneous info tech costs. So we do want you to review your commodity codes so that it decreases the amount of account code overrides, and it will help make your workflow step go faster. Because if you're not changing your commodity code and you're just letting it go through to the account code and you're doing the account code override, that is adding an extra step to your workflow. Okay, so I'm going to pass it on to Liz and she'll go over the chart of accounts.
Hi, good morning, everyone. So in order to talk about chart of accounts, I wanted to first review the chart fill structure. This information might sound familiar to you if you've already taken the chart of accounts training, but I thought it would be just useful to just go over it again if there's any new people here in the training that just started working at CCB. But the order of our chart fills goes over the who, the where, and the what for all financial transactions. So first we start off with the business unit, which identifies which organization we're going to record the transaction for. So you might be already familiar with BKCMP, which is the main campus. And then we have ASI, Foundation, SPA, which is our sponsored programs for grants, and Student Union, which is our student-centered enterprises. Fund, that is going to be your funding source. So where is the money coming from? And so you might be using either BK funds, which is our general fund for our operations, or you might be using an MX fund, which is your trust fund. But there's other funds in between those, such as MCs, MUs, those might be student fees, and there's a variety of funds. So be familiar with your funds. And if you're not sure what the function of that fund is, we have trust agreements where we have them set up and we identify what the purpose of that fund is. And so if you have any questions on funds, let us know, and hopefully we can find the trust agreement and we can provide you more information on what that fund can be used to spend on. The department identifies who is responsible for that transaction. So it could be your main department that you work for, or if you're an analyst and you have various departments, you might have several departments. So this is the area that is responsible for that transaction. And the account identifies the nature of that transaction. And so it'll specify whether are we recording an asset, or are we recording money that we owe to people as a liability, or are we recording an expense or revenue? And so we'll go into more details in the next slides. And the remaining three chart fills are program, project, and class. And these are not required chart fills. They're just additional chart fills used to help us track the data in more detail. And so that will help us track that. If you have, a lot of departments will request a project, or maybe they use program codes. And so that's just additional chart fills, but they're not required. Okay, next slide. So here we'll go over account codes, because this is what really drives P2P and the commodity codes. And so I just wanted to go over these more in detail. So the function of an account is to classify the transaction as either an asset, liability, either a reserve, such as your fund balance, revenue, or expense. And as mentioned before, it identifies what the transaction is for. Please keep in mind that account codes are shared among all business units. So it doesn't matter if you want to code something in Foundation, you'll use that same account code in Campus, and vice versa. So account codes, assets, they all begin with the number 1. Liabilities is when we owe money to someone else, either students or to a vendor or to employees. We record as a liability, and those begin with the number 2. Reserves and your fund balance, those begin with 3s. So all accounts that are 1s, 2s, and 3s, we should not be coding any transactions to those. And they're only used by BaaS or financial services. There might be some exceptions where we might be recording something to a number two, like if it's a deposit, but those are the special exceptions that we've granted to certain departments. But typically, departments will not be using these account numbers. So I won't go over any accounts with one, twos, and threes. But I will go into the revenues, which is fives, and the expenses which begin with six, which will be very relevant for P2P. Next slide. Okay, which account code to use when you're making a purchase, you're ordering services or supplies, or you're reimbursing an expense. Always use, so when I mean reimbursing expense, I mean if you're reimbursing an employee or a student, sometimes there's other exceptions, but you want to use an expense account that begins with the six. When you are collecting fees, whether it's ticket sales or fees from students or revenues from external third parties, you'll always want to use a revenue code that begins with a five. And so here I included a little snapshot of a training that we provided, I think 2 years ago for the campus-wide year-end training, where we kind of go over all the different five accounts for your MX fund. So hopefully this will be useful for you for other transactions. Then the last question that we sometimes get is, what account number do we use when we're refunding a transaction? So always look at the original account code for that transaction. So sometimes we might have a Pro card and we need to reimburse the purchase that we made on our Pro card because we made a mistake. So always look at the original account code where that expense was coded to, because that's what you're going to want to use to refund that transaction. If you're refunding a vendor, you might want to look at that original transaction as well. But any questions on refunding, please feel free to email accounting, because we're more than happy to help you, because we get a lot of questions on those as well. We might see them on collection sheets, we might see them on expenditure transfers, and so that we do have questions on that. Okay, next slide. And if you're not sure what account code to use, we did post a list of common operating expenses, and they're now under the chart of accounts website. And so you'll see it. I know it's not very visible on the spreadsheet, but it's on the, if you go under chart of accounts training, you'll see it on the lower right-hand side. And you can just download that, and it should provide you a list of commonly used account codes for expenses. And if you're still not sure and you see something that it's not on the list, feel free to send us an email at accounting@csub.edu. We have accountants monitoring that email inbox, and so they will respond quickly whenever you send an email. And so if they're not sure, we just will make sure to get you the information as soon as possible. Next slide. Okay, so for account code overrides, I wanted to review this information because these will all go to each accounting and reporting director based on the business unit. So we do review it and we need to approve it. And so that will be either myself, Jessica, Rosalva Flores for SPA, and Scott Westall for student affairs. So we review those transactions and we'll determine whether the account override is valid and if it's justified. So just like how Bianca showed you, when you can change an override, you could also, well, you know what, let me back up. Let me just start with, if you do an account override, we may ask for additional explanation or justification from a user. So what I'll do is, if I'm not sure whether the account override is valid, I will return the requisition to the user with a comment and asking them to provide more information as to why the account needs to be changed. I'll ask the user to send an email with the justification or explanation, and then I'll review it. And then based on that information, it'll either be approved or I'll send it back and say, you know what, let's change it to another account number. some of the information that I've received back from users is that they're changing the account number because they're matching it to an account code that was used last year or was used in the past. And it's okay not to change it just to match what was done in the past. So, wanted to remind users that if you're doing an account override, it's okay to match it to what the commodity code. And the only times we really should be overriding an account code is if it's incorrect. So if it's incorrect and you know that a good example would be custodial supplies. A lot of the things are coding to a different account code. I think it's 660062, but it should really be supplies. In that situation, it's okay to override it. But like Bianca mentioned, the best option is to change the commodity code so that way we don't have these additional steps of the account overrides. So it's probably the best option is to just change the commodity code and not so much override the account code. Do not override the account code to match an account code that was used in previous years. So some of the explanations I get from users is, well, we used supplies and services last year, or we've used it in the past, and that's why I'm coding it there. What it's okay to use the same account code as the commodity code, and it may not match last year. What I've explained to users is this year will be a transition year. And so as a transition year, things might not align up with previous years, but that's okay. Going forward, as long as we keep using the right commodity code, we should now see a pattern and it will be okay going forward. I know this year will be the transition year, and that's okay. We don't have to match exactly what was done last year. So just keep that in mind. Also, do not override an account code to match your budget line or your budget balance. That's another explanation I received when people will say, oh, I moved it because my budget is in this line item. That's okay. You don't have to budget line by line an account code. I did check with the budget office, and you just want to make sure overall for your department that you're in the good when you're looking at your department overall. You don't have to budget line by line. And if you do, and if it's something you need to do, for example, some grants, they need a budget line by line. And if you have a grant where you have to spend exactly where the budget line is, then maybe consider doing a budget transfer, because we want the commodity code to reflect accurate reporting. The commodity code will reflect what we're really buying, and that's what we want to keep that data intact as opposed to moving things around just because we want to match what was done last year. So if you feel that the commodity code is not right and the account code that's being generated from the commodity code is incorrect, then probably change the commodity code as opposed to overriding the account. And that, by doing so, you'll just better reflect what it is you're purchasing. Okay, I think that's the last slide. So does anyone have any questions for us?
I have a question. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Martha.
Where is there a place where we can see all the accounts? Normally I have like a piece of paper that has all the old accounts, but is there an updated area where we can just go and look them up, or are they on the system and we don't have to?
So in what is that slide? Slide 13, there is that list that I mentioned.
Oh, maybe I missed it. I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. And we can get this PowerPoint, right? Later?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, so when you go, thank you, Bianca. When you go to chart of accounts,
oh, okay,
you'll see
Can you increase that, Bianca, to make it bigger because it is hard to read?
Oh, yeah. I saw the screen. I saw that. Okay, I see. Great. Thank you.
To navigate to the chart of accounts, what you can do is you can just type in the search, just say general accounting. And when you get to our page, on the left, you'll see chart of accounts. And when you click on it, it'll take you there.
Okay, thank you.
Looks like Sylvia was nice enough to drop a link to the site.
Thank
on
you,
the chat.
Sylvia.
All right, Sylvia's got her hand up. You've got a question, Sylvia?
I do. So I understand the purpose of the training is that we want to try to keep commodity codes and account codes as clean as possible, and we're trying not to do too many overrides because you want to make sure they count for things. However, with grants, it's a little bit more challenging in that we have to stay within budget line items. And so while we may be ordering chemicals, it's for the purpose of research, which translates to supplies. So that's the reason that I know that on my end, I'm having to override the account, because when I'm running the reports and I'm meeting with my analyst, we're reviewing everything, and we've been guided to list things as either supplies. There are very few others, of course, personnel, fringe, travel, very specific. So that's where my concern comes from with regards to this. So in order for me not to have to do too many overrides, it sounds like I'm going to have to do the commodity adjustment each time I'm placing orders. Is that correct?
Yeah, if you're able to, it seems, well, how Bianca showed, it seems like it's easy to just, do the lookup and find the appropriate commodity code. The other option is probably work with the grant analyst and see if you can do a budget line transfer, like I mentioned. Hopefully they will allow you to move the budget to the account codes that you're needed. But if not, yeah, work with Rosalva, because I know Spa, she's the one that approves those overrides. And if you come up with the process with her, I'm sure it'll work.
Understood. Thank you.
And keep in mind, folks, we just are, I don't think you have to change the commodity code each and every single time you are submitting a requisition. Hopefully they're coming up correct most often, but you should always evaluate it just to make sure it's correct. I know we've had a lot of issues with the punch out catalogs, especially Amazon, because Amazon is a marketplace of sellers. So oftentimes, they identify a UNSPC code for, that's like a manufacturer code, and we are seeing a lot of times where it's incorrect, and so then that's mapping to an incorrect commodity code, which then also maps to the account code. So when we started this P2P process, this chancellor's office sent us mapping for our campus to review and determine if we had changes, and Liz and I reviewed that information, and Liz, as the accounting authority, set up some of those account codes matching to commodity codes as well to determine what follows our campus guidelines. So for that reason, when you're submitting an account code override, it's going to try to default to something we may not want it to post in that account. So there is a way to report on the Amazon website, like if there's a code that's triggering an incorrect commodity code, but I don't necessarily expect you guys to make those changes. But if you let procurement know, we can also make that change as well to report it to Amazon. I'm not going to say they are immediately going to fix it or change it, but we can at least report it to see if they can make that change so it makes for cleaner mapping. And I know we had a situation recently with Staples, and I contacted our Staples rep to have them correct the code on their end so it mapped correctly in our campus and was capturing the right workflows, because if it's not coded correctly, then it could avoid a workflow that we want to make sure it goes through. So when in doubt, feel free to reach out to to procurement if it's a commodity code question, but if it's an account code question, then your proper resources would be the email that Liz mentioned earlier.
Sylvia, I also wanted, and I should have put this in the slide for everyone. What is helpful when there is an account override? We've asked facilities because they have more account overrides than other users on campus. And what they're doing is they're adding comments on the requisition, and that helps us decide, okay, if the account code override, and then they'll put a little comment explaining why the account was being override. And so that will alleviate a lot of steps from having to email the user or rejecting the requisition, or not rejecting, excuse me, returning that requisition. So Sylvia, you might want to consider doing that, since that'll probably go to Resolva Flores. You might want to explore maybe just adding a comment, and that way it'll expedite that process faster.
Thank you. I think that will help best.
Mm-hmm.
I know there are a few special situations, though. We can only connect a single default account code to a commodity code. And I know, for example, for facilities, they have all these construction accounts, 607 accounts, that we're unable to do mapping for, 30 different account codes. So they will have, the ability to submit account overwrites for those situations. But in general, most often it's a single account number that's tied to the commodity code, and it should typically be correct. I believe we do have a list of commodity codes for P2P. I know Liz went through and kind of did some review, and we can post that on the P2P website. I don't believe it's on there yet. Correct me if I'm wrong, Bianca.
Yes, we do. I can post that to the P2P website.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions?
Jane messaged me directly. Can the commodity code be changed by the buyer after the requester submits the requisition if they choose the wrong code? No, because your commodity code dictates your account codes. So you have to review the commodity code like I showed you. We can show you that in the P2P application live. If you guys want to see that, we can show you that in a live demo. If you guys want to see that, we can show you. We have a requisition ready. If you guys want to give me a thumbs up and tell me you guys want to see that, we can show you. Okay. Julie, if you want to pull that up, we can show you the live demo. Kind of figured you guys would want to see it, so you guys like to see it live in the application. Go for it, Jules.
Sorry, I'm trying to move my screen so I can see you. Okay, so I cannot see you and see the screen. Okay, here we go.
So she's going to do that same example of headsets that are telephone usage, and we're going to override these commodity codes. Go ahead.
Okay. So which commodity code did you want to use? Equipment?
IT accessory.
IT accessory. Okay.
Okay, so start from the beginning.
So I went into the Amazon website, and I'll go here to show you.
No, like just showing. Just
not that far beginning. Okay.
Just showing where you're clicking on that little magnifying glass.
Okay.
And let me okay, so she's clicking on the magnifying glass.
Yes.
Right there. And that will pull up the folder. So this is your list of folder options. So based on what you're ordering, you can choose the folder and it will expand. So since it's a headset, we will go to IT because you're plugging that into an IT. So we consider that an IT accessory. So she's clicking on the IT accessory 115001 and then saving the changes. So now that's changing it to 115001. She's going to do the same thing on the other line, line 2, IT 115001, and changing that commodity code.
Mm-hmm.
So you guys as requesters have the ability to change those commodity codes before you proceed to checkout. So now she's going to proceed to checkout. Okay.
However, if you forgot to do it and you did proceed to check out, you could do it again here.
Perfect.
You just click the pencil and then you have the same options on this section.
So you can change it there too. Perfect, Julie.
I change it to hardware and then it changes the commodity code. I mean the account code, I'm sorry, because the account code's tied to the commodity code. But I'm going to change it back again. To the accessories commodity code, save. And then I scroll down to the line and did it change it back? Miscellaneous info tech costs. Yeah, same description as the other line. So it changed it back. Anything else you want to show on this?
So I'm just showing that her commodity code is dictating her account code. So this will minimize the number of account code overrides. So can you go to the, so can you finish your chart filtering?
Sure. So I already have it in CMP or yeah, CMP. Put in my fund, debt ID.
Clear that out. There we go.
So I don't need to do an account override because this is the account I want. And I can also check it. It's valid and then save it. And I still get the error message because I still have to do the same thing to line 2. So I'll just, since all the information is going to be the same, the account number is the same, I'm just going to copy it to the other line.
Right, because if your account codes are the same on all lines, you can copy your lines. Perfect. She has no errors and she can submit.
But I'm not submitting, right?
No,
just
because you're in prod. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So that is changing commodity codes live in production.
All right. Any questions? And if not, I'll stop sharing.
Thank you, Julie.
You're welcome.
Go back through that chat.
And I don't see, I don't see someone had a question on here, Leticia. When I changed that commodity code, it did not include any IT review after I changed it to 115001 IT accessory and supplies. I don't know if I was supposed to, but it's not changing the workflow.
Okay, any other questions on chart of accounts, commodity codes, account code overrides? I hope this cleared up a lot of questions you guys had.
think Letitia put a question in the chat.
Oh,
Bianca, when you change the commodity code for the headset to IT, will it require IT approval?
so Julie said that it did not trigger IT workflow.
Okay.
Julie, do you want to pull up your screen again and show the workflow?
Sure.
Sorry, Julie.
No problem.
So that's showing the workflow step here.
Mm-hmm.
So if you guys don't know what the workflow step is, so Julie, scroll up to the top. So once your requisition is ready, you can go to the summary here, and it will show you every step that this requisition will go through. So right now, Julie hasn't submitted it, but it will go through requisition validation. If you want to scroll down, Julie. So requisition validation is a bot within P2P. It just checks everything. It checks the supplier, it checks chart field strings, just checks everything within the requisition. DOA approval, if you click on these, so click on DOA, we used the procurement chart field strings, so that will go to Marina and Stefan. Both of them don't have to approve it. Only one of them has to approve it. But you can click on each of these steps, and it will show you who it will go to for approval. After Marina or Stefan approves it, it will go to procurement review. One of these buyers has to approve it. Then it will go through requisition validation again. P2P doesn't know how long things wait in these approval queues, so it just goes through validation one last time before it creates the purchase order. It will send the purchase order to Amazon, and then it will finish the workflow step. So if you guys ever want to know where something is at in the workflow, you can go into your requisition, and as it completes each workflow step, these little circles, it will put a check mark as it completes each step, and it will turn green in the circle with the check mark. So you can always look and see where it's at in the workflow. So that's a helpful little tool within P2P. But yes, this does not trigger IT workflow.